So today we're going to talk about purchasing a home site or a lot upon which to build a new home. There are 4 things that should be at the top of your priority list when selecting that lot. And those include the utilities, whether you can build a vacation rental home on it, architectural guidelines or architectural restrictions, and whether the lot is sloping, flat, or steep. So let's go back to utilities. With utilities, we're talking about electricity, water, sewer, and telecommunications, meaning your internet. Internet is now more important than cable TV. So those are very important. Find out who the supplier is, what and now I'm talking about telecommunications, what speeds they offer and at what cost. For electricity, almost every lot in our area has electricity there, but there's occasionally a rare one that doesn't, and it can be expensive to bring in the power if it isn't there. And then when we talk about water and sewer, for water we have either private wells, which would probably be a well that you will drill, and that's a normal expense. It's going to be an allowance of probably $12,000 to $15,000 in your building budget, but it's something that most of us live with here. And there are a few communities, especially on the mountain, that have public water connections available. So look at that. And then we get to sewer or septic. Public sewer is available to a lot of the Deep Creek Lake area and the area adjacent to Deep Creek Lake. If public sewer isn't available, then you're going to need to rely on an individual septic system. Our local health department governs the rules for septic systems, and what you need to find out from your agent is what are the limitations on that septic system permit, and usually it will relate to number of bedrooms. So for instance, if you're thinking of building a 5 or 6 bedroom home and the septic system can only be permitted for 3 or 4 bedrooms, that's a no-go. You either have to downsize or choose another lot. So now when we go next to architectural guidelines, many of the newer communities and those that do have underground utilities like I just described, they're going to have architectural guidelines or architectural restrictions. Make sure your agent gets you a copy of those and review them. Review them very thoroughly and ask a lot of questions. A lot of those restrictions are going to depend upon the roof pitch. And typically, we live in an area that has a lot of snow. That's why you want to come here, because we have nice winters. But you need a steep roof pitch so that the snow will fall off. Most of the communities that I'm aware of that have that might require at least an 8-12 roof pitch. And so that's going to be kind of more like this rather than like this. The next one is colors, exterior colors. Many of the communities want only earth tone colors. So if you're planning to have a bright yellow or red or burgundy or blue house, it might not work there. So you want to find out, what their rules are. The next one would be minimum square footage. Most of them have rules that say you're above grade square footage, meaning not counting any basement area. But the above grade square footage in many of the newer communities require at least 1,500 square feet. Some of the older communities maybe had only 1,000 or 1,200. But check that out, because if you were thinking of building a tiny home, many of our subdivisions would not allow that because those houses would not meet the minimum square footage requirement. And then the other thing related to that is whether they allow garages to be detached or if they have to be attached. And the same with storage buildings. Sometimes there's requirements. You can have no detached buildings. Sometimes you can have one, so it could be either a garage or a storage building, but in all likelihood they might not allow 2 detached buildings. So check those out. The third thing, we talked about vacation rental permissibility. There are only a few communities in the Deep Creek Lake area that prohibit short-term vacation rentals, but it's important to know where they are. If you're wanting privacy and you don't want neighbors that are different every weekend, then you might want to live in one of those communities. But if you're looking to supplement your mortgage payment and your expenses with some rental income, you need to make sure that the community that you're considering does permit and has not prohibited vacation rentals. Then last, I wanted to talk about sloping lot, and I'm going to say we have sloping, we have steep, and we have mostly level. So sloping is something that I would call that has a gradual slope to it. You want to see at least, it's nice to have 4 or 5 foot of slope over maybe a 40-foot area so that you can have a walkout basement. Walkout basements give you the opportunity to build a lot of your finished square feet underground, and that costs less than spreading it out on like a level lot, all on one level. So the sloping, I think, is probably my preference, but you can also build on steep lots, and steep lots sometimes will even give you more flexibility, but you have to be careful because in some cases you'll have the expense of retaining walls or maybe a very, very steep driveway. And I want to caution you about very steep driveways because I mentioned snow earlier, and we get snow and ice, and it can be a very treacherous experience with those conditions on a very steep driveway. If you're looking at something mostly level, think about, again, your building constraints. You may not be able to have a walkout basement, but perhaps you can be creative and by just elevating the entrance of the house 4 feet or so out of the ground, you're probably going to be able to get some nice sized windows in the basement. It just won't be walkout, but you can still get a lot of daylight inside. So again, those 4 things that I'm saying, check out, make sure your agent gets you all the information, the architectural guidelines, the utilities, whether it can be a vacation rental, and the slope of the lot. Best wishes.